Hi, this is Rolf Foster-Jorgensen. Today I'm going to talk with you about how to avoid and embrace work chaos. Now, I realize that word chaos can have a lot of different interpretations and different meanings to you. Some might be harsh, some might be not such a big deal. But more importantly here, I'm going to be actually able to define it in such a way where I hope you'll understand why I'm going to focus on some of the aspects to avoid, and also that there might be some aspects that are appealing to actually embrace. Now, for those of you not familiar with me, I've been working in Fortune 500 companies primarily for over 30 years, coaching them, consulting, training, etc. And for the last 15 years, I've worked periodically in India as well. Worked with many different companies and a lot of individuals, both coaching clients all over the world as well. I am a founding global member of the Certified High Performance Coaches, which is a very elite group, and I'm also been honored by winning a number of top facilitation awards from different companies, including as the top facilitation partner of the year for a company that the same year earned the Malcolm Baldrige Service Award. I was honored also by my peers to co-chair the Americas Conference for the International Association of Facilitators, and I've authored a number of online training tools. And this picture shows some of the clients with whom I've worked for many, many years. Some of you may also have seen me recently at the Super Achievers Summit in Bengaluru. I was honored there to be one of 10 key speakers there, focusing on a lot of educational content. And quite honestly, I was very flattered to receive a lot of great feedback on the amount of content that I was able to present to people that they felt was valuable in many ways. What that might look like, well, I'm not going to reteach that here necessarily, although I think it's important to get an idea here. I did talk about an overall framework that is important to be able to be rigorous and inclusive enough particularly if you're trying to develop or work within a high-performance team. I also talked about some ways in which your messaging can be more effective, both as a sender and as the receiver. And that's a pretty crucial aspect to make sure you get that down, and that's a key part of what I teach in my consultative skills classes and many of the workshops that I put on. I also recognize that so many people have difficulty with trying to scope a particular project at the beginning. Doesn't matter what your job title is, you want to make sure you understand what are the expectations, how are people wanting it to be done a certain way. And so I taught a particularly rigorous tool that you can use to start anywhere and go anywhere in order to understand what are all the scope requirements on a particular project in order to hopefully do it right the first time. I also focused on a particular tool I developed called Degrees of Boldness. And that's a key aspect that I'll be going to be talking about in an upcoming workshop as well. So these are some of the areas that I just wanted to highlight that I remind people of that was available, and at the same time can be available again for those who are interested. You know, one of the things I hear from so many people in many different roles is they're feeling burned out. And, that may or may not be justified. I'm not trying to judge it here, although there are some aspects, particularly on certain days, to be aware of. One of them, of course, is are you getting up that day and not really knowing what's going to happen? Now, I realize some of you are in particular roles where they're very customer service oriented, or you may feel as if other people must decide for you what you're going to do for the day. I respect that. At the same time, though, there are certain ways in which you've learned over time how to do things better, more efficiently, more productively, etc. So in that sense, always waiting upon somebody else to tell you what to do has some trade-offs that may or may not be comfortable for you. And it certainly can lead to a perspective of feeling burned out. There's so much drama going on with other co-workers around us. Hopefully you're not contributing to that. And a lot of it has to do with their perception of the boss. And you want to try to avoid that as best you can. And if you're not able to avoid it very well, getting drawn in, those are another reasons why people feel burned out, certainly. And you may be one of those who believes it's your responsibility to keep everybody positive at work around you, which is kind of a thankless, never-ending task. Yet it's certainly another contributing factor to people feeling burned out. Even if you don't think that's your responsibility, and I'm not trying to say it is, sometimes we just want to work in an environment in which people are happy and pleasurable to be around. In that sense, that it undermines our sense of satisfaction in the job as well. And that relates to our whole life. In fact, if our work is not really satisfying, it's hard to get joy and fulfillment in life. And that's a key part of what we want to look at. So from that standpoint, I'm just going to cover a particular framework that I think can give you a lot of perspective on how to deal with that chaotic type of work life that is around us sometimes. I'm just going to go through these particular areas and just elaborate on them a little bit, see if I can give you some perspective to think about. You're welcome to take notes if you like. There's no handouts or downloads from this particular webinar. It's more an opportunity just to think a little bit and to analyze, give yourself time to step back from the work life and just take a few minutes here to analyze what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to focus on trying to avoid, happens to work with the acronym of chaos, is the idea of complacency. Now here again, not trying to judge, and maybe somebody may take offense to that idea. Am I implying that you are complacent about your work? It's more the idea that sometimes we get into that frame of mind We get into that mindset and what that could mean. And there's so many different ways in which it's really easy to feel complacent. And by complacent, I mean in this case, just not excited, enthusiastic about what's going on, just kind of resigned to what's happening around us and how that can affect us. And quite honestly, there are times in which you have to ask yourself, and I ask you as well, how much do you need to endure? How much chaos, in this case, what can lead to is complacency, is really worth it. And one of the side effects, of course, of complacency is sometimes it leads to our work becoming more mediocre. And quite honestly, I think we all understand, mediocrity is not at all motivating. In fact, it's unmotivating. And it's important we recognize the correlation we can get there, that if our complacency is leading to an unmotivated environment of mediocrity, pretty soon other people are going to notice it as well. So what do we do instead? Instead, I want to focus on the idea of embracing challenge. Now, challenge certainly sounds like a word that you hear a lot of times, and people even make a joke about the idea that, well, if we've got a problem, it's just an opportunity. Isn't that a new challenge for us? Yes, to some degree, that's important. Where I want to focus on the idea as a way of avoiding complacency, though, is to seek out challenges. Don't wait for them to be brought to your attention. And that's a key aspect, because I'm going to be talking a lot about how to differentiate yourself from others around you. Not to put them down in any way, just to make you stand out. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm going to focus on that. But certainly the idea here of, rather than waiting for things to be offered to you, it's a key aspect to recognize that we have the motivation to seek out challenges. Now you may say, gee, most days I'm just so exhausted from work, I'm not sure that I really have the motivation to try to seek out more challenges. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm up to here with whatever I'm dealing with already. I respect that. Although, let me put it to a test for a moment. Let's say you came home from work, say you had a regular hours and it was a Friday afternoon, and you decided that, I just got to relax this weekend. I'm so exhausted from work. And somebody calls you up, a good friend, a really close friend calls you up and says, guess what? It turns out I've got 2 tickets for this weekend to go to Bali for the weekend, and I can't use them. Would you be willing to take it for me? I wouldn't charge anything. Just I'd like to see them go to good use. Would you okay? I guarantee you would find the motivation to decide, I guess I'm not so exhausted after all. So keep that perspective in mind, that if you find and seek out challenges that are motivating to you, you will derive the energy you need in order to make a difference and to stand out and make some important contributions to the work life as well as your personal life. Now, another area that we want to deal with is the fact that there is hostility around us. Hopefully we're not the ones contributing to it. However, it's there, and I understand that. And you may say, well, gee, I work in a workplace, everybody seems to get along. You know what? Sometimes hostility can be silence also. It can be that sense of tension that's there, even when people are not saying something out loud. And one of the challenges we have, of course, is that hostility takes many forms. What does it look like in some situations, And even if you're not personally involved, please understand, even on a global level, discourse is turning out to be difficult. People are not getting along in many ways. And if you don't think it affects you, I got news for you. It affects everybody when you're around that type of environment. Now, maybe you're the type, maybe you're not the type, to occasionally reach a point of frustration where you just have some blunt outbursts of some sort. And maybe you make them just to yourself, or maybe you make them to a close friend or whatever, a close colleague. Either way, it's taking effect. And what I'd like you to think about is, what's the long-term impact of that type of hostility, even if you're not letting it show immediately short-term to others? We just want to make sure that we recognize that hostility, it derives from a key aspect, and it's one of the ones that many people overlook. And that hostility tends to drive when there's a conflict between somebody else's values and our own values. This is important because I want to talk about the idea that maybe instead of hostility, we can try to embrace humility. Now, a lot of people could laugh at that and say, well, hey, I'm a strong-willed person, I'm take charge, or maybe I'm just somebody who believes that, I don't need to be humble at work, I need to stand out. You're talking about differentiating yourself. Doesn't that mean not being humble? Actually, it's just the opposite. I want you to think of it in the context here of the value statement I mentioned. Because the key aspect of avoiding hostility is not to impose one's own values on others. Well, that can be done in a very humble way. And it's something, to recognize that people choose whether they want to be humble or not, just like any other behaviors. And a key part of this is that what kind of a role model can you be if you are acting in a humble way? And when I say role model, I actually am implying very bluntly leadership. Now, you don't have to have a job title or a certain particular status of supervising others in order to be a leader. Leadership comes about through behaviors that are appropriate for the situation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The key aspect is to recognize that even bold behaviors can be done in a humble way, because it's really about controlling the ego. It's how we come across and recognize that we can present information even in a strong-willed, even in a bold way that focuses on either the issue or the benefit to the organization, or some other aspects that aren't based upon me, and focused on just yourself. So that's a key part of recognizing how humility can allow us to embrace the type of chaos around us in such a way that it doesn't necessarily need to undermine us or to get in the way of our success. Now, another aspect of chaos is the letter A for assumptions. We want to avoid assumptions. And the key part of this, and I'm not in any way trying to imply that everybody does this all the time. However, we all do it at least some of the time. And part of this comes about with the fact that all we see are the outwardly exposed behaviors. That's, we're not reading people's minds as to what their attitudes are, what their motivations are. We're dealing with what are the behaviors that people show to us, and correspondingly, what behaviors do we show to others. And that's a key part to be aware of, because think of all the times in which we assume something is needed to be done a certain way. We go ahead and do the work, and we find out afterwards, no, that's not the way the boss wanted it. That's not the way the customer wanted it. Whatever, whether you're in a situation here where you're working with a big company, like many of the people I deal with, or whether you're an entrepreneur, you're working with a small company, there are clients, there are customers, there are bosses, there are executives, there are managers, whatever the titles may be, with whom we need to somehow find a way to present information the way they want to receive it. And that's a key part of what I teach in my consultative skills classes as well. But more importantly, is to recognize, what about all the wasted time and resources that come about when we make assumptions? And of course, there's the humorous story that people are aware of, that why does it always take so much time to get something done, but it seems like we always find the time to redo it when it isn't done right the first time. Well, that's partially true. If it's important enough, it does get redone. The question is, are you part of that redoing? Or are you cast by the wayside because you made some assumptions that were not necessarily effective? And part of what I taught at the Superachiever Summit was the particular tool that allows us to scope things properly at the beginning, and before we start doing the work. That's something I want to touch about, and I'll also be teaching some more in that important, crucial area as we move along to a workshop I'm going to be talking about later. Now, what we do want to embrace, though, instead of assumptions, is what about authenticity? Authenticity. What could that mean? Well, for many people, it means being true to oneself. And quite honestly, when you are true to yourself and you have your day-to-day behaviors represent that, that shines. That really comes forward as being a positive thing that people want to be around. And it's part of what I talk about as a consultative neutrality, being able to step back at arm's length and sort of see what's going on without necessarily getting caught up in all the aspects of it, allowing yourself to have an authentic aspect of being diplomatic, recognizing that I don't have to judge it. I can be true to recognize that maybe there's more to the picture than my initial understanding, my initial point of view. And of course, a key part of being authentic is to consistently respect other people. That's such a crucial aspect that I deal with my consultative skills, is how to teach people to challenge other people, yet do it in a respectful way, in a way that actually others appreciate. And that's a key part of what I'm going to be talking about as well in an upcoming workshop. At the same time, though, we recognize that sometimes our own skills are at risk of becoming obsolescent. And let me kind of put that in perspective. Those of you who work in computers, I work with a lot of IT people and others. You know what? Nobody seems to be working with Windows 3.1 anymore, right? No, we've all upgraded to better operating systems and more advanced features and many new pieces of software. And of course, there's lots of companies out there that don't even exist anymore because they became obsolete. Well, sometimes our people skills, our ability to relate to others, can fall into that same category. We may think they're adequate, yet if we aren't constantly refreshing it, if we aren't finding new ways to be better at our people skills, we can become obsolete in that area, and in such a way that we may not even be the ones to notice it, yet somebody else does. Pretty soon I hear people talking about, I deal with clients of all different ages and backgrounds, and sometimes I've had people say, well, I wonder if I'm getting too old and I'm facing age discrimination or something. The more we dig into it in the coaching, it may very well be they just haven't upgraded their skills. They haven't kept up with things that are desirable and needed in today's marketplace. It has nothing to do with age. It has to do with outlook. It has to do with mindset. It has to do with whether or not we believe we can contribute something that hopefully will allow others to see the value differently. And that's a key aspect of it. So, let's face it, it's harmful to say we're going to just work hard and solve everything that way. In fact, I hear some people say, kind of complacent comments where they say, well, if I get a better job, I'll work harder because I'll be more motivated. This particular one, I just don't like it. I don't like the boss. I don't like the coworkers. Whatever you make a list that you don't like, people think, well, I'll just wait for the next one. I got news for you. The next one may not come along unless you can do an excellent job in the current one. And that's a key part of keeping your skills up to date, keeping your mindset ready to go, and recognizing that only when you do the current job with excellence do other people feel that they wish to offer you more opportunities, or that you can seek them out in such a way, in a credible way, that people will take you seriously. So it's a key part to be aware of, and how we might be able to, I think, allow ourselves to embrace options. And options are crucial. And quite honestly, it sounds like, well, just be open to anything and, be sort of the Keanu Reeves in the Matrix, where we just let things flow and kind of dodge out of the way and things like that. It's much more than that. In fact, a key aspect here is it's, besides being open, it's also being ready to act. And that's the part that sometimes people overlook. They realize that, maybe somebody will tell me what to do, or maybe if I just listen and wait, watch other people long enough, I can figure out what the options are, what the best choices are. Or maybe, which is good, we go and talk it over with somebody, confidential, and somebody with whom we can be direct, and we can actually share our feelings and our concerns. Those are great aspects of dealing with options. The key, though, is to bridge past that point and make sure that we take some action of some sort, whatever that may be. And quite honestly, personal development is one of the key aspects or key areas that allow us to be comfortable acting on our options. It's that leadership aspect I talked about before that doesn't correlate to job title. It doesn't necessarily have to be a situation where we have to be assigned a leadership role in order to show leadership characteristics. Key part of it. And of course, it also ties in the idea that I said before about don't wait for things to happen. Seek out the challenges, particularly those that are tied with the options that seem to make sense and what's ready for you. At the same time, one of the challenges that people deal with a lot is what I call stridency, meaning they're overly excessive, obsessed even sometimes with a particular approach or point of view. This really ties into what I mentioned before about values. Sometimes we allow our own personal values to get in the way to the point where we're so strident, we're so, conscientious to the point where we actually go past a line where other people are not comfortable anymore dealing with us. And that stridency gets in the way. And let's face it, anything, even good traits taken to extreme can become self-limiting. So we want to recognize what aspects happen with that excessiveness, because quite honestly, excessiveness alienates other people. And it may be that you have a great story, a great message, your values are right on target and it's exactly what people want to hear and would learn from. However, if it's presented in a too strident way, it undermines your credibility and your ability to, in fact, it goes further. It labels you as being someone that might need to be replaced when the next economic cycle comes around, whatever the situation may be. And this is particularly valuable with a lot of the people I deal with that I call contingent workers. These are the people, they're like myself, independent contractors, independent consultants, or they may just be project labor, working on a particular project, so many hours. They may or may not get fringe benefits. They may not even have a contract. However, the aspect there is they feel as if, okay, I'm doing good work. They may even think they're well received. However, what happens at the end of the project? Is it a case where the project ends and people get laid off and they get say, hey, thank you, we'll call you next time we need you? Well, you get those roller coaster rides, then you get those gaps in income and things. And that's what I want to help people try to avoid. So as the economy changes, which it inevitably will, is how can you make yourself much more, ready to be the type of people who are kept and indispensable when those situations occur. And part of that key is to be situational, to focus on recognizing that as we adjust to the situation, whatever it may be, that allows us to be more versatile and more capable. Now, if you're not sure that things are that situational in your job, you say, well, it seems to be the same thing day in, day out. Ask yourself a difficult question. is what you're doing today exactly the same that you did 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago in some cases, a month ago? It could be 10 years. Whatever the time frame is, things change. And you've adapted to it to some degree, sometimes kicking and screaming, other times very willingly, and other times certainly it may have just happened so gradually that we hardly even noticed or paid attention to it. The key here is to recognize we have the ability to be flexible, to adjust based upon the situation in such a way that we can proactively anticipate it better. We don't have to be caught by surprise. And that's a key aspect of what I talk about with my consultative boldness workshop, is how do we reduce the surprises that can catch us off guard. Now, when we look at this whole model here, this whole framework, I guess is a better way of putting it, it allows us to be reminded of some of the things to avoid and some of the things that we can embrace no matter what type of work environment we're in, and to not necessarily let that environment get us down. It's our ability to be situational, to seek the challenges, to do it in a humble way, be authentic to ourselves and our values, and at the same time not impose on others, and be open to the options. That combination allows us to embrace work chaos, even when it's not necessarily of our doing, because in a way, we're taking control of it. So one of the ways in which situationalness seems to come into play is a particular tool that I've developed. It's a 6-module online course. It's available then 24/7 because it's online. People tend to go through it once and then they go back through it at regular times again as they wish, and that's their choice. It's about allowing you to influence other people's likely receptivity to your ideas, their energy and their actions. This is the key. Before you need their support, or at least their lack of resistance. That ability to proactively anticipate, to become situationally alert. And by this way, I mean situational alert is a step above situational awareness. And I go through why and how that's so different and some benefits there. So that's one of the things that are available to you. Now, at the same time, though, you're so close to a more fulfilling life. I'd really like to be there to help you get through that and to kind of open up the doors. And part of what I'm talking about here is to realize that, some people are just tired. A lot of people just tell me they're tired of things. They're tired of being surprised by the actions and motives of others that you rely upon in your life, whether it's at work or home or anywhere else. Those surprises start to get us down after a while because we feel as if we're lack of control or out of control, or we're so dependent upon just a ping pong ball of other people, bouncing back and forth and not necessarily feeling as if we are in control of our lives. Another aspect they're tired of is just not getting respect for their knowledge, their talent, their skills, etc. That's not always based upon it being obsolete in some ways. Also, it just comes across in how you present yourself, how you ask questions, how you present information, which I'm going to focus on as well. And then sometimes, I'm sorry to say, and I hope this is not your case, we get that pressure from the family or significant other, some partner who realizes that, particularly if you're a contingent worker, maybe your income doesn't seem that secure. However, even if you work for a big company, people tell me all the time, they're only as secure as their performance from last week. There's no guarantees in life anymore. That's one of the challenges to be aware of. So instead, I want to ask you, are you ready for being able to confidently believe that you can handle any workplace situation? Because that's what I teach. I help people be able to be situational, to understand that you can, in a confident way, in a bold way, with still being humble, be able to believe that you can handle any workplace situation. It's not just a pep talk. It's truly specific skills, specific tactics, and its ability to learn those and internalize them and have them nearby when you need them to be able to refresh. It's the way in which you differentiate yourself. And once you start differentiating yourself, you become the person that other people seek for guidance and for leadership, no matter what your title is. And you may say, I'm not sure I want the burdens of leadership. That's fine. You always have the option to choose it or not choose it. The key is, isn't it nice to be asked? Isn't it nice to have people come to you and feel as if you can guide them, you can give them some perspective that they're not getting somewhere else? It feels good. And at the same time, it also contributes to a more productive as well as a more enjoyable workplace, which is part of what we're trying to achieve. Now, part of that, of course, and I'm being very honest here, I want you to be indispensable when economic cycles change. And they always do. It's inevitable. No matter how prime it seems right now, or how great it seems, the time will come when it's not. And you want to be the ones that people single out and say, we cannot afford to lose that person. That's a key aspect of it. So in that sense, I want you to join me and join others in a consultative boldness workshop. Some of the things you're going to learn there, very important ones. What questions can you ask that compel others to find their own reasons to change? And here's the key. They actually thank you for it. Sometimes it's very directly, they come out, thank you. Sometimes it's in other ways they thank you through workplace benefits, etc. The key is one of the things I teach so much is all the different types and levels of questioning that allow you to, in a neutral way, in a humble way, in a way in which it allows a differentiating approach, how you can get other people to feel that they have their own reasons for changing, that you don't have to force them to change. You don't have to try to impose your values on them. So sometimes, no matter how hard we try, we deal with somebody's resistance. And I like to teach a technique that helps change that resistance into at least neutrality or sometimes even support. And by doing that, it allows you to generate allies that you may need now, you may need in the future. The key, though, is to convert resistance into both objections and into support in such a way that you kind of build up that benefit that you can then tap into whenever you need to. I'm also going to teach you a very practical technique where in 1 second you can actually act in such a way that could save your career or at least a relationship with somebody. It's one of those areas that people just don't realize how simple it is to learn. I'm going to teach in the context of it maybe takes 20 seconds to implement. The key, though, is to recognize in that 1 second, do you want to use it? Do you want to apply it? Do you want to save that relationship? Do you want to save that job, that career, that project, whatever it may be? Most of the time we want to say yes. However, it's still your choice, all right? And then, as I mentioned before, just minimizing surprises, being able to anticipate what type of bold options are available for me in our work or personal situations. These are just some of the many things that will be covered in this particular workshop. Now, many people tell me these are must-have skills. I've got to learn these things. Certainly, you can apply them immediately, and I believe very strongly about teaching things that people can apply right away, both in their work and home situations. I want you to do it, though, in a safe way, where it already enhances whatever successes you've already accomplished. And many of you, a lot of people I deal with, are already successful. I tend to work with people who are successful, and I bring them up to here, big jumps. I don't work in just small little increments. I like to help them make a major change in their life. And at the same time, do so in a way where they appreciate it and they're responsible for it. They're not relying upon me to do it. I'm just the catalyst to help them get there. So part of what I talked about here is these must-have skills. Being a person that others seek for guidance turns out to be one of the best ways in which you can enhance your indispensability in the future. We also want to be able to, increase that sense of security that your family or your loved ones have and need to have in order for you to have a comfortable relationship away from work as well, all right? What I want to teach here with this workshop is the blend of that online course as well as the live training. And hopefully that allows you then to reach a point where you have greater fulfillment and joy in your work, whatever it may be. Now, what's it involve? There is an investment involved, certainly. And I want to give some perspective of what that is worth to you, basically. When I do a one-day live training, and I'm going to be doing one on Friday, May 19th, and if that day doesn't work for you, please don't tune out here because there's other aspects involved. But certainly, the regular price for that would be $580. That's, a lot for a lot of people, and I'm not going to be charging that, obviously. I just want to put some perspective on it, what other people pay, particularly when a big corporation pays for a large group of people. That's going to be even more than that, certainly. And at the same time, what I focus on, one of the things I focus on in this consultative boldness workshop is the ability to, a brand I came up with called Challenge Executives. And it's not just executives, that it could be a boss, it could be a manager, it could be whatever title you want. It could be a customer, a difficult client, whatever. The key is to challenge you to be able to challenge them. And that's one of the techniques I teach as well. And then I mentioned before the situational alertness course. Well, that regularly is priced at $75. It's actually worth $297. People used to pay for that, but I try to get it out there to lots of people. It's a 6-module online learning that you can do 24/7. So, if you look at that, that's what it would mean is a combined $655 or, depending upon the conversion rate, it's more than 44,000 rupees. And I'm not going to charge that for people. That's not necessary. I want to make sure that this is valuable, that you can get a lot out of it right away. So instead, I'm going to take about 85% off of that rate. I want this to be something that people embrace and that they can handle, they can do it. So it's a special rate only of 6,250 rupees, and it's a key part to recognize that this is worth investing in yourself. You don't necessarily have to wait for some employer to decide this is worth sending you to, because that's not the proactivity we've been talking about. It's the ability to say, what aspect of personal development do I want to make sure that I embrace? What part of consultative boldness do I want to make sure that I can live every single day? So that self-investment is a key part of it. It's going to pay off many, many ways for you. Now, let's talk a little bit what can happen here, though. And so part of the challenge we deal with, of course, is that sometimes we're still unsure. Can I really afford it? What do I want to do it? I want to put some more perspective on this, if you could. Being able to attend this workshop allows you to really maintain control of all of your work projects because it applies in every aspect of your life. It allows you to have smart balance in your portfolio. So whether you have different businesses, whether you have different projects you're working on, or even just different aspects of one's job, sometimes pieces get out of balance. And the analogy, of course, is that the tail wags the dog. It gets a point where we lose track of what's important and we wind up getting caught up on all the side things. I want to help you through in a bold way, get control, be able to know that you're really dealing with the most important aspects of it. And at the same time, we need to do that in a safe way. So I teach you how to anticipate when and how to safely assert yourself. And by asserting, I'm not talking about doing things in a rude way. It's actually very diplomatic, very respectful. It is, though, recognize that you can be authentic, bold self and still be humble. Now, respectfully challenging any person, and I'm using executive manager as an example, it could be a coworker as well. The key, though, is to recognize that there's specific techniques that work better than others. It's not just the idea of a pep talk, say, go do it. No, it's how you do it that makes it effective, and that's a key part to be aware of. So sometimes we need to actually escalate an issue to higher levels. They're difficulty beyond our control, we think, or maybe they're not going as well. And I want to teach you how to sensitively do that so it doesn't come back to haunt you. It doesn't label you as someone who's either a troublemaker or somebody they can't deal with. And it also allows you to decide which battles are worth fighting. Because there are sometimes which the fight is really worthwhile and the outcome is worthwhile. And we may decide, hey, I'm not going to back down on this particular issue. It's something I feel strongly about. I'm still going to teach you a diplomatic way to deal with it. However, being able to quickly decide, is it worth a fight? Or sometimes we decide, this is worth backing off of. How can I discreetly save face if I choose to flee from whatever the conflict may be? And by conflict, I don't mean physical conflict. I mean just verbal conflict. I mean the type of workplace interactions that occur that sometimes lead to tension, which correlates directly to our satisfaction in the job. It's what I call the finesse of consultative boldness. So I want you to be recognizing that these are all aspects of just this day-long workshop and what it can lead for you. So it's important. I want to make sure that I can deliver this workshop. We need enough people signing up to be able to do that because it costs a lot for me to come over. I live in Canada, and even though I go to India regularly, I want to come over for this May 19th workshop and make sure it works. So look on your screen to see if there's a direct link to enroll, and if there is, please do so now. Or for some reason it's not there, you can't find it, whatever, here's a particular site you can go to, superachieversummit.com/Rolf, and it's a way in which you can then scroll down to where you can pay and enroll for this particular class. It's well worth it. And please remember, it's not just the physical class that day, it's also being able to have access to that online course, which is so valuable as well, almost worth as much as the particular cost for the two combined. And that's important that you recognize that even if May 19th is a conflict for you, we are seriously looking in some ways in which we may be able to have a recording or some other method in which once you've paid, you can still tap into the learning, even if that day is a particular conflict for you. So don't rule that out completely, please. Give us a chance to kind of put the event together and so that it does actually happen, and then everybody can benefit. Obviously, we guarantee we're not going to charge people if it doesn't happen, but it's more importantly that we get enough numbers to make it work. So remember, just summarizing again, looking on Friday, May 19th, 2017 is the day of the live training in Bengaluru. We'll let you know the site, those who enroll. You'll have access immediately to the online course, the 24/7 available, all for 6,250 rupees. It's really worth it to invest in yourself. Give yourself the permission to actually challenge you so that you can become more bold in how you deal with everything around you. I do look forward to working with you, and particularly, let's work together on this. Great. Thank you.